Well, hello, everybody. Welcome in. Oh, that's a little hot. Welcome and good afternoon. Happy Thursday. I hope that you all are having a great Thursday as well as I am. This is our weekly Idea Training Academy stream. You can go check out more about the Idea Training Academy at my website, ideatrainingacademy.com. This is a place where we talk about growth, personal growth and development. We talk about the world of work. We talk about the world of relationships. And more than anything, we talk about how you can get just a little bit better every day at everything you do. So, welcome to those of you who have already hit the chat. If you haven't yet, let us know that you're here. Let us know maybe where you're watching from or what's going on in your world today. It is Thursday. Thursday's a great day. Don't you love Thursday? It's a great day because it's kind of we're edging towards the weekend. We're kind of on the downhill slope. Things are starting to slow down, hopefully a little bit. I know that many of us work into the weekend and there's a lot going on the weekends, but there's just something about hitting that Friday afternoon and that Saturday that kind of gives me that feel. Greetings, Head of Steel. Welcome in, my friend. It's good to see you. By the way, if you're hearing interesting names like Head of Steel and Guitar and Rose Nightshade and all of these other names, if you're on our YouTube feed right now, that's because we are also streaming live on Twitch, and on Twitch we use different kinds of handles. So you may hear some interesting names. That's okay. By the way, I'm just going to drop this right now. If you are watching on YouTube, I would appreciate it if you would take just a moment and hit the subscribe button. That would be amazing. Every new subscriber is one more chance for us to grow the message of positivity, of growth, and of self-belief. And that's what we want to do. We want to give you the power to change your future for the better, to live out the best future you possibly can. So I hope you're doing well today, guys. I hope you're excited about where your life is right now. And if you're not, I hope that you're hopeful about where your life can be. Because one of the things that is most important for positive growth is to maintain a positive attitude. It's really important. I've been reading this book called High Performance Habits. It's by Brendan Burchard, who's an amazing coach and an incredible speaker as well. I got a chance to hear him a few weeks ago, and one of the things that I was reading about today is bringing the joy, just bringing the joy and reminding yourself throughout the day. He even talks about how he'll set reminders on his phone. He'll set an alarm on his phone with, with the label that says "Bring the joy." Remember to bring the joy. So I hope that you're bringing the joy to your world today, wherever you happen to be at. And I hope that you are also receiving joy as well. But here's an interesting thing. When we focus on bringing joy to our world, what happens most often is that we do receive it back. There's this kind of magnetic, kind of very reciprocal thing about being intentional, about being positive. And so I hope that I can help you build structures to maintain positivity in your own life, because I'm going to be honest with you guys. Nobody gets anywhere through negativity. And I know there are some people. Do you know people who use negativity, who negativity is, it's just kind of their persona. It kind of becomes their identity. People who are always, you want to talk about something great that happened or something exciting that happened, and they always have the downside to that. Or people who are always thinking about, oh my gosh, but what bad thing could happen? What could happen? Do you have people like that in your life? People who are negative? Just observe those people, if you will. That's what I'd like you to do this week, among some of the other things that we're going to talk about. But I would love to have you just take a moment to observe those negative people that are in your life and see if it looks to you like they're on a path towards growth or not. Because I would bet you will probably find that those people are not typically on what we would consider to be a growth path. But that's not what we're here to talk about this week. This week actually was spurred on by a conversation that I had with Head of Steel today. Head of Steel is a good friend of mine, and he's in the Discord. By the way, if you're in the Twitch channel right now, you can hit !Discord. If you're in YouTube, you'll find that Discord linked there in the bio of the YouTube. But the Discord is one of the places where we have regular conversations about a lot of this stuff. And in fact, I do a daily coffee chat. in YouTube where I sit down. Usually it's Monday through Friday, usually at 8 a.m. Pacific time, which is about the time that I'm drinking my second cup of coffee if I'm going to have two. And it's just a chance to talk. It's not a directed conversation of any kind. You bring to that conversation what you need, and I do the best to bring perspective to whatever I can. Let's see. I see you are trying to be the best reformed negative person that you can be. I love it. Love it. It's so good because you know what? It all starts with recognition, right? Thank you for hitting that Discord head of steel. There it is. If you're in the Twitch chat, make sure you join that. Here, I'm going to drop that. I'll actually cut and paste that and drop it right into the um, there we go. I've dropped it into the YouTube chat as well. So if you happen to be watching via YouTube, you can hit that Discord and you can join us up as well. But thank you guys for joining wherever you happen to be joining from. Today's topic, the thing that I wanted to talk to you about today came out of that conversation with Head of Steel today, because we were talking about a colleague of mine. We're talking about someone who is having a kind of a difficult time in their work, kind of their workplace right now, and trying to help that person come out of that and feel a little bit better about the way things are going. And what we're talking about is that person is currently working with a leader who is not real open to admitting that they're wrong about things. And that's a challenging person to work with. I don't know if you have a lot of experience. I hope you don't have a tremendous amount of experience working with somebody like that. But working with somebody who has a hard time admitting that they're wrong, that can be really trying. It could be a real test for you. So, first of all, question for you: have you had to work with somebody who has a hard time admitting they're wrong? And then, second, being reflective about that, right? Are you that person? Are you that person who has a hard time admitting that you're wrong? And I want to be very clear. This is a no judgment zone. I think if you haven't been this person at some point, this person who has a really hard time admitting that you're wrong, if you're saying that you've never been that person, then I think you might be having a hard time being honest with yourself. Rose says, so much experience, unfortunately. Experience working with those people, maybe some experience even with being those people. I know I have. Listen, I have, especially when I was younger. I had a really hard time with it. But I had this really interesting conversation yesterday. We were sitting down in a meeting that I was in, and I was there with the CEO and the CFO of this company that I work with, and it was called retail. It can be sometimes. Guitar. But the question is, how do you frame it for yourself, right? How do you avoid being that person? I was sitting in this meeting the other day, and these two executives were kind of joking, and the one said, "Oh, why are you criticizing him?" Talking about me, and I said to him, I'm like, "Hey, listen, you can criticize me all day long. If you've got something to say about the way that I'm operating, or a way that I could improve that, if I've got something wrong, then I actively want you to tell me that, because if you don't tell me that, I might not find out. And if I don't find out because it's in a blind spot of mine, then I might have a hard time proceeding forward in the best way possible, doing the best job that I can for you. So by all means, give it to me, whatever you've got. I'm not soft-skinned. I'm not thin-skinned. And you can't be thin-skinned if you want to build yourself for growth. One of the most important aspects of a growing person is their degree of resiliency, how much resiliency they have. And I'm going to talk in a later podcast a little bit about how you can gauge your own resiliency and figure out where you're at. But today, I want to talk to you about being wrong. So let's talk about being wrong. The first thing is, do you feel like it's okay to be wrong? Do you feel like it's okay to be wrong? Or when you think about being wrong, do you think about that as something that you should avoid at all costs? This is a really important framework, because what we find out is that people who are afraid of being wrong usually don't progress very quickly. because they get so tied up in overthinking about whether what they're doing is right or wrong that they will stumble over their own thought process and they will not progress forward. In fact, and I've said this before, the people who tend to be highly successful tend to be the people who use the motto fail early and often, right? Fail, 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 fail until you finally find the way to succeed. Because 5 failures down the road, if you're still thinking about the first one, then the person who's 4 failures up the road is 4 failures closer to the solution. So it's important that you start to frame not just failure, but being wrong as not just something that's okay, but something that's an expected part of success. So today I'm going to try and help you recognize and embrace your own mistakes. That's my goal today. And I do have a bonus resource that's available for you. If you're watching this right now, you can head on over to my website, ideatrainingacademy.com, and you can get it there. There's a little place where you fill in your email address, and then I email that right to you. If you are a part of the Discord, you can hit me up in the DMs, or you can make a post there and let me know that you'd like the free resource. Today is it's a daily reflection and growth journal. It's a little something that I've created that just asks you a few questions. So you can sit down every single day and you can ask yourself these few questions, and that'll help you reframe being wrong. Now, I'm seeing, let's see, on YouTube, I think there's a difference between being wrong and making mistakes. You're absolutely right. There is a difference between being wrong and making mistakes. And I'm glad you called that out, because most people don't see that difference. Most people see being wrong as something that's attached to their identity. So if I am wrong, right? If I said the wrong thing, if I did the wrong thing, right? If I believe the wrong thing, that's the key one right there. If people find out that they're believing the wrong thing about something, a lot of times that gets really attached to their identity. Now, making mistakes, some of us are a little bit better at making mistakes. It's still being wrong, right? Making a mistake is still being wrong. You've made the wrong choice, generally. But it's a little bit different from believing the wrong things, right? Or being able to admit that you did the wrong things. So let's frame this for you here. Now, we're going to talk today. The conversation is going to be kind of broadly about the idea of being wrong. So we're going to include both the mistakes that we make as well as the beliefs that we have that are wrong. Now, here's why it's hard to get into the belief part of it. Have you ever talked to someone who was a flat earther? Let's take that one real quick. And for those of you in the audience who may be flat earthers, I apologize in advance. I don't have that belief, and I think demonstrably it's not an accurate belief. Okay, so if I lose people over something controversial like saying the Earth is not flat, I'm here to say I'm okay with that today. But people who believe that, people who really believe that becomes so much a part of their identity that their life becomes about something called confirmation bias. So you've probably heard of confirmation bias, but for those of you who may not, right, confirmation bias is I believe what I believe, and I'm going to go searching for evidence that supports what I believe, and I'm going to discard evidence that discounts what I believe, right? So, if I'm only looking at the evidence that comes from, we'll step momentarily. Hey, Whit, welcome in. We'll step momentarily into the political field, right? If I believe that one party is the right party, the good guys, then guess what? I'm probably only going to watch the one cable network, right? And I'm never going to watch the other cable network, right? You could pick your side, whichever one it is, right? There's polar opposites on both ends. But if I believe, I'll take my 94-year-old grandmother, who believes very strongly in a certain political party, and there is only one news channel that she wants to watch, and that news channel is very, 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 very biased in the direction of that particular political party. So the trick is, adding additional evidence onto my grandmother's plate is not going to change her mind. Because if being right about this specific set of things is a part of her personality, if it's a part of her identity, then doing surgery and separating those beliefs out from the truth, or from at least a balanced account of things, that's going to be very, very difficult. I don't think that you, sorry, I'm late. I was not focused on time. Don't even worry about it, Whit. I'm so glad to have you. So pleased to have you. Now, I don't think if you're in this stream today, if you're in a stream that's all about growth, that's about becoming better, that's about elevating, I don't think you're probably that person. I don't think you're that person that has beliefs that are so specific and strong that you're only willing to listen to one bit of information or one channel of information. My guess is that if you're worried about being wrong, it's that you're worried about the way that it looks or the way that it comes out or the effect that it might have. Let's just go back to this employee that I was talking about earlier. This particular employee has happened to work with somebody who is in a management position, but this person in a management position would never admit that they were wrong about the way that they were managing, even though there might be visible detrimental effects to the team. This person would never admit it. And there's some genetics at play, if you will, here. Not genetics exactly, but there is something to the way that you were brought up and sometimes the time that you were brought up, that's going to inform how you believe about being wrong or being right or making mistakes or having failures. So if you grew up in a time kind of before me and probably encompassing my generation in some of that, there were a lot of systems and there were a lot of places, at least here in the United States at that time, where you were taught that black is black and white is white. And if you get any white in your black, then you have to throw the whole batch out. Does that resonate with you? Do you know people who are like that? It's like, okay, well, it can either be true or not true. There can't be any middle ground. And I like to call this, I don't think this is official, but I like to call this the baby with the bathwater fallacy. I love it. I hear this a lot in the political realm. I hear it sometimes in the religious realm. I hear this around aspects of, well, there are some good things about that, but because there's this one bad thing about it that I disagree with, I have to throw the whole thing out. And I'm here to tell you right now that if you're going to pursue life like that, you will miss every opportunity that presents itself to you. Because very few things in life are going to present themselves as black or white. There is always nuance in the human experience. And if you are not observing that nuance in the human experience, you're going to miss every opportunity that comes along. You're going to be looking for that one thing that lines up specifically with everything that you believe, and you're not going to take into account that not everything you believe is black or white. Some of the things that you believe are in the middle. So today we're going to work on the concept of wrong awareness. Rose says, I used to struggle in the gray when managing a target. That's really hard, right? It's really hard because let's see. So let's go to target's great. So let's go to retail. Guitar mentioned it as well. And I spent, as many of you know, I spent many, many years in retail sales myself. And in retail sales, it's always that mantra of, well, you've got to hit your numbers. You've got to hit your numbers. You've got to hit your numbers. And in fact, in some of the industries that I'm dealing in right now, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what. You've got to hit your numbers. You've got to hit your numbers. You've got to hit your numbers. But here's what I'm here to tell you is that those of you who have been successful in those fields know that if you hit your numbers by only focusing on those metrics, if that's all you focus on is those metrics, then you're going to hit them for a while. You're going to get success for a little bit. Absolutely. You're going to be able to juice that and, pump it really hard, and you'll probably be able to hit those numbers. But for those of you who have been in that environment, how long can you maintain that? Because if your experience is anything like mine, you can't. You can't maintain it. You might hit it once, but you can't maintain it over time. It's not sustainable. Because in fact, yes, you have to hit your numbers. But guess what? You also have to be a leader. And a leader invests in people. a leader develops people, a leader supports people, a leader serves people. And if all you're focused on is the black on the page, which is the numbers, right, on the page, and you don't focus any on the white, which is uplifting and supporting and helping people grow and finding out what's important to them and what motivates them and what brings them joy and how they can bring their best self to the table every day. If you're not focused on those things, if you're only focused on the black and you never bring the white in, guess what? That black over time is going to fade and it's going to go away. Because if you are building anything, any initiative, if you're building it only based on a goal, and this is why I focus on systems over goals, if you're building anything based only on a goal or only on an outcome, then you are building your house on the sand. That's a biblical thing. I won't go too far into it, but I will mention this, right? One of the problems that I have with a lot of churches that I walk into, and I'm not shy about the fact that I'm a follower of Jesus. I've been in churches for my whole life. That's a thing that happens in my family. So if this is not your thing, just hang on for a second. But I do want to be very straightforward with the fact that the problem with a lot of churches, especially in America today, is that those churches are teaching people just to hold on until the end. That's what they're teaching. They're teaching you just got to hold on until this life is over, and then you'll get your reward. And let me tell you, first of all, it's not biblical. Not biblical. That's not the way that Christianity was designed. That's not the way that following Jesus works. But number two, on top of that, not only is that not the way that it works, it's not the way to live a right life. Because it's about what we do now. What we do now is what makes what happens in eternity important. And there are so many churches that I walk into around the country that they just don't get that. They're just like, hey, let's hold on. Let's build the wall. We love to build walls these days, right? Let's build the wall around ourselves and let's make sure we protect ourselves. Now, let's step out of the spiritual and back into the business world. It's the same thing. We want to build walls around our practices and around our systems and around the way that we've figured things out. And when we do that, what happens is we exclude the outside perspective that can make us better. I'm going to catch up with chat here a little bit. Rose, got that from Rose. It's very rare to find something that doesn't have that gray area. Honestly, there isn't anything. I honestly believe that there is nothing in human experience that doesn't have the nuance of being gray. Right. And that's why when you have people who argue vehemently on one side or the other of a topic, that you've got to pay attention. You got to wake up and you got to pay attention. When somebody starts to use absolute language, this is always true. This is the only way, right? When they start to use those absolutist languages, your ears should perk up, right? Because maybe it is always true. Maybe it is the only way. Sometimes those things happen, but usually when someone is using that type of language, they're trying to sell you something. And most often they're trying to make you afraid of something. And that's, and again, I don't want to get too deep into the political, but a large part of what happened in this last election was we learned the power of making people afraid, right? And I think that we forgot how powerful making people afraid can be. And there were certain voices that did not forget how powerful that was. And they used that as a technique to get people on their board, on their side, right? And so that's just something to remember. When we hear people talking in absolutes, they're generally trying to sell you something. Let's talk about why it's important to recognize when we're wrong. I think we've established that it is important, but why is it important? First one is just growth potential, right? We talk about blind spots, right? Blind spots are a thing that we all have, that we're all going to encounter at some point in our lives. Being open to being wrong, recognizing when we're wrong, it reveals those blind spots to us. It makes us more adaptable, more capable of learning, more pliable. Here's a really important one that may not have occurred to you. You may not have heard this framed in exactly this way before. One of the reasons it's really important to recognize, and not just recognize, but communicate when we're wrong, is because it builds trust with other people and it builds connection with other people. So, how many times have you been in a situation where somebody was doing everything right? Everything was exactly perfect and they were glowing. They had the halo on, everything was beautiful, it was great. They could do no wrong. Do you ever have a hard time connecting to those people? Doesn't it seem like people sometimes who are just a little too perfect, a little too charmed, doesn't it seem like there's a hard connection there? And I'll tell you, in my experience, those people who are looking like that, generally they're creating that appearance, right? They're creating that appearance of perfection. They're creating that outward appearance of having it all together. And in fact, a lot of times you'll find that there are things in their life that are deeply broken and need to be mended. But because that appearance, that identity, right, of being right, of having everything right, of being in the right, is so important to them, sometimes they don't address the things that are hurting in their lives. And you all know me. You know that I'm not a person who's going to tell you, you know what, you should sit with your feelings. You just need to sit with your feelings. You need to experience your feelings. No, you need to acknowledge your feelings and you need to determine whether or not the emotions, the way that you're interpreting the emotions that you have, are productive or not, whether they're leading you to a better future or not. Because if they're not, then it's time to reframe those emotions. That's what I'll tell you. But some people are all they neglect the stuff that needs to be healed. And if you're doing that right now, if you've got if you've got a wounding somewhere deep inside of you, and we all do, right? Every one of us has taken some hits. So if you've got something inside and you haven't dealt with it, or you don't have a place to deal with it in your life, take some time and make some space for that. Make some space to deal with that. Therapy is a great tool for this. Sometimes even, just talking to a friend or being open about it, that'll help. But I can tell you, from the wounded places in my life, right? I've talked on here a lot about how for the first half of my life, I guess I'm in the second half of my life if I'm lucky, but for most of my life up until just a very few years ago, even though I had tremendous success in some fields, I always kind of struggled with the belief that I wasn't good enough to really get to the next level. That I wasn't good enough to stand on my own. That I always needed somebody else's shoulders to stand on. And it wasn't until I started to heal that and deal with that belief about myself that I started taking risks and stepping out on my own and finding out what I could do. And now, as a result, I'm doing things that I never believed I would do before. So, if if there's a gift that I can give to you today, it's this: give yourself permission to deal with the things that are holding you back. Be honest with yourself about what they are, and heal those wounds or work on healing those wounds because that will move you forward very quickly in your growth journey. Okay, but let's talk more about how admitting that we're wrong builds trust with other people. Like I said, it's hard to connect to somebody who's perfect. But if have you ever had somebody who goes, "Man, I sure messed that up," or have you ever had somebody apologize, like really apologize to you and say, "You know what? I came, thought about this. I was wrong. I was wrong. The way that I said that, the thing that I did, it was wrong, and I just want to apologize for that." I I have this experience. I'm so lucky. My wife and I, our relationship it has really evolved over the years, and this is one thing that we're both pretty good at, and that is when we have that moment where one of us, we don't come to the conversation from a place of kindness, or we don't say it, the thing the way the thing should be said, right? When we don't come off in a loving way or in the way that we want to come off, both of us are really good, have become really good at taking a moment and then just saying right on the spot, hey, that wasn't the right way. That wasn't the right way to deal with it. There have been 3 or 4 examples in the last few months, where one or the other of us has said that, "You know what? That wasn't right. The thing that I said wasn't right. The way that I said it wasn't right." If you say, "I was wrong," if you're willing to say, "I was wrong," whether it's a belief, whether it's an action, whether it's a methodology, if you're willing to say that you are wrong, you will build trust and connection with other people and also with yourself. Because once you can start being honest with yourself, that's when you will start to move out of fear and into action. Because fear is the opposite of action. Fear always drives us backwards. Think of that quarterback who's on the field in the football game, and you see him, trying to go through their progression, and they've got a rush that's coming at him, and that quarterback has a few different options, right? But how many times have you seen a quarterback turn around and run the other way, right? And what happens? They take the sack, they end up with negative yards on the play. Whereas if they at least, throw the ball out, throw it away, even if they fall down, at the line of scrimmage or they try and scramble for a couple of yards, at least there's some kind of forward progress or there's no loss of progress. But it's when they become afraid, when they move in fear, that is when they lose yards. I try to make a point to do that, especially with the kiddo. That's so good, Rose. Especially with our kids. This is so important. Our kids need these things. They need these things. And I didn't get these things when I was little, and it's not like I fault my parents for that. Like I'm looking at my parents every day and saying, "You didn't instill in me the idea that I could be great." Right? Because where and when I grew up, that just wasn't what you did. And I'm not saying that that's right. In fact, it's wrong. It's wrong that whole generations of people were held to that idea that they probably weren't going to be able to be great. But that's the way my parents were raised. That's a part of my background. I don't fault them for that, but I do fault myself for not learning the lesson earlier on. So he understands that you have to own up to your mistakes and never expect it to be perfect. Ads. Sorry. I know we've got some ads. We got, I think, about 23 more seconds left on the ads. If you're on YouTube, hopefully you aren't experiencing that right now. But over on the Twitch side, we currently have an ad. So listen, my ask for you here is just take good care of your kids, guys. And I'm not talking about, when I'm talking about taking good care of your kids, I'm not talking about you got to always be a helicopter, right? That old term, helicopter parenting. I'm not saying, and welcome back for those of you who are just coming back from ads. I was just riffing on the same thing. I'm not saying you've got to hover over your children, but what I am saying is it's your responsibility to build resiliency and to build honesty and to build greatness into your kids because they've got it. Your kids have everything they need to be great. Be someone who drives them towards it, not away from it, right? Don't tell them what they can't do. Show them what they can do, right? That's what you've got to do. And again, I received a lot of opportunities throughout my life, and I'm super grateful for those. But it's just there was a very specific time and place in this country where you grew up kind of probably believing that you weren't going to do great things. It would be okay to just have a house and have a family, and that would be okay, right? But I always felt in my soul that there was something bigger that I needed to do. And it's been my responsibility to do that in my life, and I haven't. And so now I'm taking responsibility. So we do the same thing for our kids. The last thing about why it's really important to admit when we're wrong or to recognize when we're wrong is because it helps us build better decision-making skills. When we reflect on our mistakes or when we reflect on our errors, so if you receive information that shows you that you're in error on something, reflecting on that actually helps you refine your judgment process because it helps you take a step back and say, okay, where did I get that from? Why did I believe that? And why did I latch onto it so much? Yeah, are you familiar with the 3 whys process? This is on the Daily Planner. Again, a little plug for the Daily Planner. If you head over to the website at ideatrainingacademy.com, you could throw your email address in and I'll email that right out to you after the episode today. If you are on the Discord, if you want to join the Discord, you can direct message me on the Discord or just drop a message in chat there, and we will certainly get that to you as well. But one of the aspects of this daily mistake, I call it a reflection growth journal. It's not really a mistake planner, but that's affectionately kind of what I've been calling it in my head. One of the aspects of it is the 3 whys. And so let's say that you find out you're wrong about something, or you find out that you did something wrong. Let's go with a mistake for the time being. Let's say you made a mistake, you did something that was wrong. The first thing you're going to ask yourself is why? Why did I do that? Right? Why did I do that? So let's say here I'll use an example from my real life. Something that's happened recently is in one of the companies that I work with. I assisted in putting a person into a situation that was maybe not the best seat for them. Not that they didn't have the capacity, but because of the people they were going to work with and because of the constraints, I put them in that place. I helped put them in that place. So I could ask myself, okay, why did you do that? And the first response, so you go through your first response. The first response was, you know what? I believed that was the right step for that person developmentally. Okay, great. So it wasn't the right step for them developmentally. So why didn't you see that? So what's the why beneath the why? Why didn't you see that? Well, I was working with this person from a mentorship standpoint, and I knew that the other person that was going to be directing them had a lot of experience, and so I didn't do my homework on how that other person was going to be managing this person. And as a result, I just let my belief in the person carry them through into that moment. Okay, well, why then? So why did you put them there? It was because, you believed it was the right place for them, but why didn't you see, where was the mistake behind the mistake? The mistake behind this mistake was not doing, my homework on this management style of this other person. And the why behind that, I'll tell you the why behind that. The why behind that is I was being conflict avoidant. The other person that we're talking about, the person who's above the other person, who was struggling a little bit with the management style, is kind of hard to talk to sometimes. They're not always in cultural line with the rest of the organization. They are actually one of these people we're talking about that I have never heard admit that they were wrong, right? And I think they would have a really hard time with that. And as a result, I didn't go to this person and say, hey, we need to set guidelines, we need to set boundaries, and I need to understand how you're going to develop this person. I didn't do that because I was being conflict avoidant. So I put too much trust in the situation, put too much trust in in what I poured into the individual. And as a result, I made a mistake, right? Hey, Tigress, how are you doing? It's good to see you. Tigress M. Hello. Good to see you. It's been a while. So the why, right? Ask yourself 3 levels of why, and don't let yourself stop before you can answer all 3 of those whys. Why did you get to where you are? So this is a big difference between people who are aware of their mistakes and people who use their mistakes as fuel for their development. People who are aware of their mistakes will go, you know what? I messed up. I'm sorry. But if that's where it ends, there's no guarantee that you've learned anything. There's no guarantee that, that anything is going to happen as a result. It's just, oops, I'm sorry. I messed up. But people who are reflective on why that moment happened, that becomes fuel for the fire of your growth. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about how can you be reflective about the times when you're wrong, about the mistakes that you make, about the failures that you experience. This is what we call a growth mindset, right? So listen, if you are in chat today and you don't know that everyone makes mistakes, I would like to welcome you to the world where everyone makes mistakes. That's just a fact of the matter. And like I've said before, these are essential steps in the learning process. You don't learn without mistakes. What have you ever learned without making a mistake? Have you ever learned anything without making a mistake? I would hazard that you probably have not. When you're learning an instrument, why do you put so much work into practice? Because you're doing it wrong a lot of times until you start to do it right. But if you're not doing it wrong a lot of times, why would you ever practice? Right? So that growth mindset, this is growth mindset in action. It says, I know that mistakes are normal. I know that they're necessary. I'm going to make mistakes. And when I make mistakes, I'm going to mark them. I'm going to acknowledge them. I'm going to communicate them, and I'm going to learn from them, right? It also helps you with creativity. And one of the things that I work a lot with people on is creativity. I have a creative background myself. I was a theater professional for a long time. I was a film professional as well. I started a company that was a performing arts company, and so I have a lot of background with creativity. And one of the things that I see in creativity is almost like that quarterback metaphor that I talked about a little bit. People who are afraid that their idea might be too out there, or that it might, offend some people, or that, or that. People who are afraid, they tend not to make very creative choices. And so if your greatest fear is of being wrong, or having to admit that you are wrong, or having something not work out for you, it's going to limit your creativity. So I guess what I want to encourage you to do is look at your mistakes as experiments. Think of yourself as a scientist, and you're conducting research. So jump out on a limb, try something that may not make it. Give yourself permission to fail, and then mark it down, right? And say, okay, experiment number 1 failed. Let's go to experiment number 2. Experiment number 2. How many inventions in the world have been created, from a long list of failures? I told this story recently about how the Post-it note, pardon me, how the Post-it note, which is ubiquitous, which everyone uses, the Post-it note is the result of a failure. The guy who invented the Post-it note was actually trying to invent a very, very strong adhesive, but the adhesive that he created was weak. And so it didn't work out the way that he wanted it to. But then when he was singing in his church choir and he needed something to mark his pages with, he remembered that weak adhesive. And sure enough, you slap that on the back of a little piece of paper and you have the ultimate bookmark. That's the story of how Post-it notes came to be. So give yourself permission to fail, because sometimes failure turns into a bigger win than you would ever have expected if you had done the thing that you wanted to do in the first place. So be creative, be innovative, be wrong. Be wrong. Be willing to admit that you're wrong. This also the concept of acknowledging you're wrong also builds emotional resilience. And this is something that I talked about a little bit earlier, especially with kids. This is one of the reasons it's important to get kids into the mindset. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to fail. It's okay to fall down, because that builds resilience, right? Like the little kid who's just learning to walk, and you and Mitchell have one of these sooner than you would like, I'm sure, with the baby. But when those kids start to walk, they don't stop after the first time they fall down. Trust me, they don't stop after the 50th or the 100th or the millionth time they fall down. They keep going. And that builds a resilience that creates strength, that creates an ability, right? So just remember, failure is part of you creating resilience in your life. And that's going to make you stronger for the big moments, because those big moments are going to come. And when the big moments come, it gets harder. It gets harder. When your organization grows, it gets harder. When you become successful, it gets harder. When you start making 6, 7 figures, it gets harder. When you start booking all kinds of work, it gets harder. It gets harder. It's supposed to be hard. You have to tell yourself it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard, because if it wasn't hard, everybody would be doing it, and then nobody would be doing anything, right? Because if everybody is capable, then nothing gets done. Just like priorities. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. If everybody could do it, or if everybody was doing it, now keep in mind, I believe that most people are capable of anything they put their mind to. If they use their resources correctly, if they have good ideas, and if they follow through and consistently execute, I believe that most people are capable of whatever they put their minds to. But problem is that a lot of people don't put their minds to things. So just know when it's hard, it's supposed to be hard. That's making you stronger. It's making you better. It's bringing out your best self. You can do it. You spin a gun, drop it. You need a tired grip. You learn a new trick. You do it like this. Realization. You learn and probably break it and then succeed. Exactly. It's, you know what? Every failure, every time you're wrong, every time you make a mistake, that could be the moment before a breakthrough. It is crazy how often breakthroughs come on the heels of tremendous failures. Wait, it's hold on, let me look at this. It's in the YouTube. It's sort of like jazz. It might be a bunch of wrong notes, but sometimes it gets organized into something desired. Exactly right. That's exactly right. You never know. You never know what's going to fly through. And if you've ever done anything creative, you know that sometimes it is the craziest ideas that actually become functional. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about this growth reflection journal that I have available for you. Once again, it's available at the website ideatrainingacademy.com. It's available via email there. It's available via our Discord if you message me there. But the idea of this is, and I would challenge you. So I'm gonna give you a challenge. I want you to try this for 3 days. 3 days. I'm not asking for a week. I'm not asking for a month. You know, I'm hoping that maybe it's something that will be useful to you, that you'll be able to use time and time and time again, or maybe it's just something you'll bring out as a tool when you feel like you're kind of in a negative space. But this daily growth reflection journal, what I want you to do is I want you to do 3 days. It's a 2-page spread, okay? And here's what it's got. So the first thing you do is you're going to describe the mistake or misstep. Now, even if you don't want to use the journal, this is kind of a framework for how you can deal with reflecting on mistakes or wrong beliefs or wrong actions or being wrong. First thing is I want you to write down what happened. And when I want you to write down what happened, or when I want you to think through what happened, I want you to think through it or write it down as if you were observing it, not as if you were living it. So, you know, in my case, not I made this mistake, but I would say Andrew made this mistake, right? I would write it down that way. The reason I want you to put yourself in third person is that when we're looking at our own lives from the outside in, we have a tendency to be more objective. This is a psychological thing. I don't know exactly how or why it works, but it does. When we observe ourselves in the third person, we have a tendency to be more objective. So write down the mistake, write down the misstep, try and focus on those objective facts, not judgment, right? Because judgment will break this whole process. The moment you start to say, oh, I'm dumb. Oh, I was weak. Oh, you know what? I'm just not cut out for this. The minute you start to say those things to yourself, you will stop in your tracks. If any of those things come out of your mental mouth, you need to stop whatever you're doing, and you need to say to yourself, that's not who I am. That's not who I am. I am capable. I am good. I am skilled. I am talented. I am persistent. I am resilient. I am positive. I am optimistic. I am capable. I can do it. So anytime you get that negative self-talk in your head, I want you to stop and I want you to say, no, there's no I can't in my identity. It's I can. I am an I can person. I can. Mornings are hard, but I can do hard things, right? That's just like we tell my daughter. So first, you're going to describe the mistake or the wrong behavior or the wrong thought or action. And then you're going to reflect on your immediate emotional responses. So now you're going to say, okay, well, what's my reaction to that? What are my initial thoughts and feelings? And maybe you're going to find that you're carrying shame. You know the difference between shame and guilt, right? Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am wrong, right? And there's no place for shame in the life of a growing person. There's plenty of place for guilt. You can always say, hey, I did something wrong and I'm not happy with that. But when you take that into your identity and you say, I am that wrongness, that is where you will stop. So, what are your initial thoughts and feelings? Are you embarrassed? Are you afraid that somebody might see it? What are those? Process those. Write those down. And then we're going to do the three whys. So we're going to look for the root causes. Okay. So objectively, I know what happened and I know how I felt about it, but let's try and figure out why. Why did it happen? And then why did that happen? And why did that happen? What's the three whys? What are the patterns? What are the blind spots? What are the things that I didn't consider? And then we're going to go to the next step is we're going to go to an activity that I call I probably don't call this. I probably read it somewhere, but I don't remember where. But this is the cognitive reframe, right? Cognitive reframe. You're the goat. Welcome in. A little late, but I just thought of something cool to say. You want to hear it? I do want to hear it, goat. Give it to me. I'm going to continue to talk about cognitive reframing while you're typing that, though. So the cognitive reframing is actively saying to yourself, I am looking at this as a learning opportunity. So this challenges those thoughts, right? Those self-defeating thoughts. Oh, I'm just dumb. I couldn't see that. I'm so blind. I'm so stupid, right? No, I'm going to learn something from this. I'm going to learn something from this. Cognitive reframe. I will learn from this moment. Then you're going to take a moment to identify what the lessons you learned were. At least one takeaway from that. And you're going to focus on growth, not on regret. Chris, what's up? Just keep swimming. Let's go. Agreed. So I want you to focus on what is the lesson, at least one constructive takeaway, right? Talked about the situation at the company that I was talking about. What's the positive takeaway that I have? I'm going to build systems for being less conflict avoidant with this individual. So that's a takeaway. I've got that takeaway. That's highly useful because I know how to do that. And telling myself that I know how to do that means that I'm going to be able to do it. So, Goat, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Orpheus Coin, call sign, friendliest pirate on the seas. Thank you, Goat. I appreciate you. So we're going to do the cognitive reframe, then we're going to do the lessons learned, and then we're going to write some action steps for next time. So what am I going to do next time I hit this thing? What am I going to do next time I come to this fork in the road? How am I going to choose the right one? I talked about this a little bit. If you're on the YouTube channel, you can look at some of the videos that I've created. One of those videos is about having hard conversations with. Usually, we're talking about kind of an employee scenario there, but although it doesn't always have to be. But one of the things that I say in that video is there are two questions that are really important, right? That for you to help a person solve when they've done something that's wrong that you need to talk to them about. And those two questions are the same questions you can ask yourself. How did this happen? Right? That's the three whys. And how can I keep it from happening again? That's the action steps, right? And then once you're done with that in this daily journaling process, you're going to do some positive reinforcement. You're going to congratulate yourself for recognizing and for saying that you were wrong. Simple as that. You know what? I figured out that I was wrong. I figured out what the lessons were. I'm a growing person, right? You're gonna give yourself some positivity coming out of this. You're gonna say, look what I did today. Look what I got to do. I got to learn. I got the opportunity to get better today. That's so awesome. I love it. Yeah. And then there's a little reflection on there as well. There's a little reflection at the bottom of the page on the second page. I'm looking at it here. Sorry. That says, today I acknowledge that being wrong is a step toward becoming better. Every experience, even mistakes, is a building block for my growth. So that's the daily self-reflection growth journal that I would like to challenge you to use for 3 days. And then what I'd like you to do is when you're done using that for the 3 days, let me know how it goes. Hit me up, shoot me a comment on YouTube, or hit me with a DM in the Discord, or just come back to this stream next week and tell me how it went. I'm curious about what lessons you're going to learn from that. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of things for the last kind of note I had written for myself here was, okay, well, let's talk about this idea of wrong awareness and how we can apply that in everyday life. Because I know that, yes, there is the business world, and yes, there is, there's this and there's that. There are all of these kind of moments, right? That we can step into that are very professional and very important and all of those things. And that's all good. And we do need to do that. But at the same time, sometimes we just need to talk about how we translate these things into everyday life. And I had a couple of thoughts on this. The first thing is this: practice with your everyday life. Practice with the little things. Focus on really small mistakes, right? Just little, what you might call dumb things that you do, right? Why? Because it's not as overwhelming. If you have a moment, if you have a tremendous moment of failure, or if you find out that you thought the world was flat and sure enough it's round, and if you try to jump into that without building a discipline of doing this, it's going to be hard for you. So start with the small mistakes. What did I do today? What did I do today that I can really diagnose, that I can really figure out? So start small and then practice journaling those, right? And then revisiting those entries. So go back to those previous pages and say, okay, what did I learn? What did I learn? Recognize that growth. Oh, I made that mistake this time, but I made it a whole different way this time. But hey, at least I didn't make this mistake again, right? And then probably the key character function that's important here. And maybe I should have started with this. I don't know. Maybe I'm second guessing myself. Maybe I'm admitting now here that I was wrong about the way I approached the stream. But the core character aspect of this is humility, right? And I'm not talking about the kind of humility that says, oh, you have to be self-effacing and you have to be ashamed and embarrassed and you have to tell other people how much better they are than you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the humility that says, hey, you know what? I'm not the most important thing on my planet. I'm not any more important, than you are. And in fact, my ability to serve you is more important in many ways than me myself, right? You got to love yourself. You got to be good with yourself. I get it. But just remember, the things that we carry forward into eternity, into the future that we're designed for, those are the things that we do in service of others. The things that we do in service of ourselves die with us. But the things that we do in service of others continue on into eternity. And so a part of humility is taking that mindset into everything. And so if you're learning lessons from being wrong or doing wrong, or you're going back through this reflection process, you're doing that because next time you're going to be able to do better for other people. You're going to be able to serve other people, right? And those moments in your journal, those mistakes, and I just want you to work on one a day. Like, I don't want you to go through and take 15 pages and write down every single thing you did wrong. Just go diagnose one mistake a day for 3 days and see how you feel after that. Because each one of those journal entries is a milestone. And that's a milestone towards you becoming more resilient. It's a milestone towards you becoming more growth oriented. It's a milestone towards you becoming a better decision maker, a more creative person. Everything that you do gets better when you focus on learning from your mistakes or from just flat being wrong sometimes. So that is that. I don't know. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you'd like to throw out? Let me check the anonymous question page and see if anybody's thrown anything into here. Give me a second. Let's move this over here. And sorry for those of you. Seconds to find where I put this. There it is. I found it. Okay, so let's see if there's any questions on the question page. Again, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining today. I know that this is, if you're on the Twitch side of things, I know that normally I do a lot of kind of funny stuff, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of silly stuff, and that this feels a little bit jarring. But I just want you to know that the reason that I do all of that stuff is because of this. Because I have a message that I need to get out to people, and that message is you can be great. You have everything you need to achieve greatness, but you can't just sit on it. You have to actively pursue it. Thanks, Orpheus. Well, thank you, Guitar. I appreciate you. I can't talk, but I appreciate you. Let's see. I'm checking. Thanks for the positivity. No way, man. Thank you for the positivity. You are great. You are great, my friend. And I want you to continue to be great. Well, seeing nothing in that, I guess we're going to do that. Again, the Growth Reflection Journal is a free downloadable PDF that you can use as a tool in your journey towards wrong awareness. And of course, I'd like to encourage you to join in by journaling for 3 days, just 3 days. If you can give me a week, give me a week. But if you can do 3 days, let's do it. And then let's get back together again next week and let's talk about it. We appreciate you. I appreciate you, Mitch. I appreciate everybody who's here. And I you know what? I just want to say that later, taters. I want to say that, but I also want to say, listen, guys. I know that the journey to growth can be hard. I know that it can be awkward. I know that it can be uncomfortable. I will remind you that it's supposed to be, right? But I want to tell you that somewhere on the other side of the fear and the pain and all of the mistakes you're going to make and all of the learning you're going to do, somewhere on the other side of that is you. The future you that doesn't just dream about great things, but does great things. I want that moment for you more than anything else. So my friends, you have everything you need in your life, in your mind. You may need skills, you may need learnings, you may need some additional resources. They're out there. Go get them. You've got a moment of greatness that's waiting for you, but it's not coming for you. So go be great. See you next time.